not just one anonymous claim or one former employee that has an axe to grind. In it, there's one former coach, Earl Watson, who's on the record. And Earl Watson says some pretty damning things about Robert Sarver. But if this is just a story about Earl Watson said this happened, Robert Sarver says it didn't happen, that's one guy's word against one guy's word. ESPN spoke to 70 sources on the matter. So that's significant here. It paints a very broad picture of a lot of incidents, not just one or two. The second thing that stuck out to me was the quote from a co-owner. Okay, this is not another owner in the NBA. This is not a rival. This is a guy or female that is a co-owner of the Suns with Sarver. So Sarver is the prominent owner, but he's also got co-owners. And this Suns co-owner says, quote, "The level of misogyny and racism is beyond the pale. It's embarrassing as an owner." Okay, so that's significant as well, because this is somebody who has to work alongside Robert Sarver, has to own alongside Robert Sarver, and has a vested interest in the organization. And even that person is saying the level of misogyny and racism is beyond the pale. That, to me, stuck out. When I read through this story, what I read is an obnoxious rich guy. It's an obnoxious rich guy that owns all of the power in the organization and thinks that he can say and do anything without many repercussions because he can. Because that's his reality. The rest of us say something out of line, you get called into a meeting, HR gets involved, your boss gets upset, you do something, you say something that makes somebody uncomfortable, you're involved in this meeting, in this online course, and this and that. The other thing, for the owner of the Suns, there's no railing that he can't touch. There's no third rail. Unless it's a lawsuit. Unless then he gets jammed up in legal proceedings. But in terms of within his company, he gets to say whatever he wants. And when I read through this story, I see Robert Sarver, who is crass, who is obnoxious because he's got all of the power and likes to leverage it. And he's finally getting called out because there's a number of people finally willing to call him out. And perhaps that's because workplace behavior expectations have changed. Perhaps that's because the NBA has shown that it will rid itself of cancerous tumors at owner like Donald Sterling. Perhaps it piggybacks off of the Dan Snyder, John Gruden emails, bad behavior from powerful people in sports. But whatever the reason is, Robert Sarver clearly is an obnoxious rich guy that has felt like he could get away with being obnoxious. And he has. He has. He contends in some of these incidents that it never happened or didn't happen the way that the person says. But there's also a series of incidents that he admits happened and says, oh, that was poor taste. That was a bad joke, a poor attempt at humor. On and on and on and on and on it goes. And here's the thing. You've heard the old adage, where there's smoke, there's fire. Sarver basically responds through his legal team to almost every one of the anecdotes or incidents. And in most of them, he's like, that's not the way I remember it. This is what happened, I thought. Or that was misinterpreted. Or that was misconstrued. Meaning that there's a series of incidents over 14 years that he is, or 17 years, that he's been unable to say, didn't happen, not addressing it, actually had to address all of these because there's significant numbers of these. You know, it wasn't like this was a one-time incident and Sarver goes, that's not the way it happened. There's like 20 incidents. Are some of them bad jokes, crude jokes that perhaps you could get away with in 2004 and not 2021? Maybe. But to me, it just shows a pattern of behavior where he was an obnoxious rich guy. Powerful, thought that rules really don't apply, certainly didn't care about how other people felt. And the other part of this as I'm reading it is, I hate to say this, but I thought, of course. Because outside of James Dolan, who's also known as a violently angry, petty, paranoid, divisive, stubborn type of guy, which is what Sarver comes off as, who are the two most dysfunctional franchises in the NBA over the last 20 years? Who lose the most? Who turn over the front office the most? Who are the most volatile working environments? Who bust on draft picks most? Knicks, Suns. Suns, Knicks. In the NFL, who's the most dysfunctional franchise? Who loses the most? Who turns over the roster the most? Who meddles in draft picks? Who has bad coaches? Who has constant soap operas? Washington. I mean, if you follow sports long enough, you know the bad organizations, and you know they're bad because of their owners. And their owners aren't just bad in sports, from a sports context. They create bad work environments for everybody. An organization in sports is not just the sport. It's not just the wins and losses. You have a business team. You have a finance team. You have a sales team. You have an equipment organization or part of the organization. You have broadcast rights. You have media partners. You have sponsorship partners. And you have to build, these are billion-dollar corporations that are not just coach and players, GM coach players. The worst organizations in sports always have the worst owners in sports. And the worst owners in sports are usually, can you see as we thread the dots here? James Dolan, Robert Sarver, Dan Snyder, obnoxious rich guys. Bad behavior, obnoxious, crude rich guys. And that's the common thread here. Now, last year, of course, the Suns end up going to the NBA Finals, and every step of that season was, can you believe the Suns are doing this for the first time since? Last year, with the benefit of Chris Paul and Monty Williams, Chris Paul was incredible, and Monty Williams proved to be an incredible head coach. The Suns overcame the dysfunction of the organization. It took 15 years to do that because Sarver was so bad at what he built. And the Knicks, same deal. And Washington, same deal. It's just, if an expose came out about the Rooneys, be like, wow, that's pretty shocking. If an expose came out about the buses, that'd be pretty shocking. If an expose came out about the Spurs ownership or Packers ownership, that there was all of this sexist, misogynistic, racist, deplorable, bad behavior, you'd be like, wow, really? When it comes out about the Suns, you're like, yeah, sounds about right.